beautiful people, it's Renee Davis. Thank you guys so much for joining me on my channel, She Sparks Change, where the goal is always to spark a change in your mindset that will then, of course, spark a change in your life. If this is your first time joining the channel because you saw a video last week, welcome. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. And for those who have seen videos before, thank you for your continued support. Speaking of last week's video, I have to say I appreciate you guys so much. I got so much love, so many messages and likes and comments. It just made me feel so good because my mother is somebody obviously who's dear to my heart. She is such an inspiration to me. So to be able to share that with you guys and for you guys to be blessed by it and receive it so well, it just truly touched my heart. So thank you for the support. That being said, make sure you tune in next Tuesday because I'm going to have another special visitor, a very dear friend of mine, and I can't wait for you guys to see her and see us in action, so make sure you tune in. Okay, all that being said, let's take a few minutes to get inspired. So there used to be this show on TLC. I don't know if it's still on, maybe not. I haven't watched it in a couple years, but it was called Say Yes to the Dress. And basically it was a show in which brides-to-be would either go to Atlanta or New York, and so they would go to these stores that had hundreds upon hundreds of these fancy dresses, obviously all different types of cuts and shapes and sizes and colors that they could choose from, and they would spend a whole day there where they had their, most times they had like the mother of the bride, maybe the mother of the groom, their maid of honor, sisters, close friends, basically a nice little group of people, and they would all go out for the day and they would go to the store, and this is all being videotaped, and of course the bride would try on dress after dress after dress, and she would have her, those people that were with her, and of course they all had their own different opinions. Oh, I think this looks good on you, or I don't like that dress, you don't need to wear it, as if it was their wedding. And so she often had, the brides always had a difficult time finally selecting a dress because one, it was a huge financial investment, and two, of course, it was because it was for their wedding day, and so this was a day that they wanted to cherish and remember forever. But when they finally actually picked a dress that they wanted to select, that they wanted to wear, that they actually said yes to, they would have people come out and they would ring a bell that signified she found the dress. She said yes to the dress. Well, that being said, I think sometimes we experience that very same thing. Okay, so maybe we're not trying on a whole bunch of wedding dresses, but when it comes to serious decisions in our life, sometimes it can be just so difficult, so hard to finally say yes. And so that's why today I want to talk about say yes to the dream. Think about it. Have you said yes yet to the dreams that God has placed in your heart? Let's talk about it. Yes, it seems like such a simple word, but sometimes it can just be so difficult to say. Now for me personally, saying yes to the people in my life comes probably a little too easy, where I'm just saying yes all the time. But the funny thing is, when it comes to God, that's when that yes becomes a lot more hesitant, because he doesn't really ask for the things that I can completely 100% have confidence in doing on my own, but he asks for me to do the things, to say yes to those things that are going to require him and faith in him to do it through me. So let me give you guys a little backstory. You guys know, if you see my very first video, the passion behind Spark Change, which is the mentorship program that I started for high school girls. So I've talked about the passion behind it, why I wanted to start it, and how I launched it. But I want to give you guys a little bit of the background details of what my life particularly looked like when God kind of finally pushed me to launch out with that. So as I've mentioned before, Spark Change, the mentorship program, was a vision that God gave me many years ago. Just a little inspiration. One day I want to start a program for girls. That was it, right? And so a couple years later, I really started to get into it and started to create a curriculum, started to meet with people because I was ready to start. I wanted to start it in Washington, D.C., and I was ready. And God just put the halt on everything and was like, no, it is not time. So I put things aside, and a couple years later, after I moved back to Delaware, kind of got the nudge to start it again. So I'm starting to rework things, kind of look at what I've been working on. And then one day God was like, okay, you need to start it now. Say yes to that dream now. And so I was like, I had limited financial resources, and when I say limited, I mean limited, okay? I had limited access to other young ladies where, you know, I knew young ladies in my family, but I didn't really have access to a group of girls. I didn't know where these girls were going to come from. I had no location of where I was going to have it, and of course to have a location you need financial resources, which were already limited. So I was like, Lord, you are asking a lot here. How am I supposed to launch out with this thing? But I just kept getting that push, like, you need to start it now. So I thought back to a person that I had met with in person a couple weeks prior. I had told her that I was planning on doing a mentorship program. And so I got up the courage and I sent her an email. And in this email, I'm talking about how we're going to have an open house for Spark Change, and I would love for her and her daughter to be there. Now, mind you, she was the only person that I knew to invite at that time. So I was just like, but I did it anyway, right? So I sent her the email to invite her, and afterwards I'm like panicking again, like, oh my gosh, I have nothing. I don't have a location. I don't have people. I don't have a team that I'm working with. But I pushed forward and I did it anyway. And I remember when she emailed me back and was like, we're gonna be there, and I was like, oh, okay, this is real, right? So I really had to pray and was like, God, you have to do this, because I don't have what I need, but I have you. So you're gonna have to do this. And he definitely did. I remember that Friday, the young lady came with her sister, and we had a great time. We had laughs, we had discussion. I talked about the program, we played games, and it was just a beautiful time. We had $5 pizza from Little Caesars, because like I said, I was on a serious budget. And we just had a good time. And at the end of the night, I just stood in amazement, like, God, you really did this thing. You really launched the program. To think that that Friday night literally happened almost a year ago. I'm just amazed at what God has done from that point on, where he's brought even more girls to the program. I've gotten to have more workshops every month. I've gotten to take them on outings, and we had a sleepover, and just to see all that he has done up to this point, it just amazes me, even to the point where now I am planning a conference with my mother to reach even more girls in the Wilmington community. It's crazy. It's crazy. And it all started with a yes. Saying yes to the dream that God had given me. And it didn't necessarily start with that yes of actually launching the program and having a Friday night, but it started with little yeses along the way. You see, I think sometimes it's hard to say yes to God because we think that he's going to ask something huge of us. Like, we think that God is going to be like, okay, tomorrow, I need you to sell every possession that you own, sell your house, sell all your clothes. I want you to buy a one-way ticket to South Korea, and I want you to live there for a year and be a missionary. Now, that may be one person's mission, but rest assured that if you have absolutely no experience, no passion, you have no connection to that missionary field, I doubt that God is going to ask you to do that tomorrow. And so sometimes we get in our mind this idea that God is going to ask us to do things that we absolutely hate and would never want to do. But God isn't like that. He's a loving Father. And what He does is ask you to act upon the passions that He's placed in you, those desires that He's placed in you. He asks us to be obedient to His will, which is conformed to the gifts that we already have, the talents and the skills that we already have. He asks us to take a journey that makes every single experience that we've had in life make sense. And so when He asks us to do things, He asks for just one yes at a time. The first yes came when a friend approached me about joining an accountability group with other women who had visions that they wanted to see come to pass. And so I said yes to that. We started meeting monthly, and I got so many tips and so much information on how I could actually launch out with this group that I wanted to do. And then from there, he asked me to say another yes, where I had a friend who was hosting a program for high school students, and she had different tables that she wanted represented there, and she asked me to represent Spark Change there. Mind you, this was a time where I had absolutely nothing. I had no girls I was working with. I hadn't launched the program yet. I had no website, no business cards, but I said yes. And I put together some things, and in fact the very first picture that you see when the video starts is actually a picture of me that night at her program, where I was getting people to sign up and just telling people about the program. And then from there, a couple months later, he asked me for another yes and to actually launch that program. And then he asked me for another yes when it came to starting a blog, and for another small step of a yes when it came to starting this YouTube channel, and another yes when it came to participating in this conference. So, will you say yes to the dream? I don't care if you're a high school student who has ambitions and dreams to one day become the President of the United States of America, or if you're a little bit more seasoned and you've lived quite a few years here on this earth. It doesn't matter your age, it doesn't matter your status, your environment, your financial condition. All you have to do is say yes to the dream. Say yes to God's will, because it's so much greater than you could ever imagine. Know that when I said yes, I never could have imagined that my life would look like this today. And I know that this is still yet a glimpse of all that is to come, of all that God has in store. All because I was willing to say yes. So, be courageous. Say yes to the dream. Say yes to the nudge that He's been giving you. Say yes to the journey that He wants to take you on. I want to end with a truth that you can stand on. It comes from the Bible in the book of Jeremiah. Jeremiah chapter 29 verse 11. And just to give you a bit of a context around the verse, I will say that God was speaking this message to the Israelites. And they were people who at that time had been exiled from their land, from all that they knew, that they were familiar with, from their homes. They were in a foreign land amongst a foreign people. So you can imagine how difficult it was, how difficult their position was. And this is the word that God gave them. He said, "For I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future." And the point is that God also knows the plans He has for you. He knows what it's going to take for you to accomplish the dreams that you have. He knows the resources that you're going to need. He knows every single detail. So don't worry if you don't know it, because He does. And I can promise you that your future is bright. Just say yes. Thank you guys so much for watching today. I hope you were encouraged. Be sure to check out next week's video where I'm going to have another special guest. And also, As I mentioned before, I am having a conference alongside with my mother and an awesome group. The conference is going to be taking place Saturday, November 19th of this year, where we're going to cater not just to the adults, but to young women and young men. In fact, yesterday you may have seen a save the date that I posted for both the young men and the young women. So make sure that you tell those people that you know about this conference. Let them know that it's coming up. It's $15 for the youth to participate. So between now and then, I'm sure you can put that money aside. Let other young people know so that they can be encouraged and be filled with hope. And just know that they too can say yes to the dreams that God has placed in their life. That being said, I'm going to round it off by saying, as always, I love you guys with a love that only comes from the one up above. Have a blessed day and have a wonderful week. Bye, guys.